Sorry for that brief interruption. As a comment, since this is just now starting, I think that in light of Ben Meyer's open presentation just a short time ago, many of the observations, criticisms, and suggestions of Maude Royden, of whom my presentation is about, may seem both perceptive and prescient. So in 1928, she did a year-long round-the-world tour that included New Zealand, Australia, Japan, China, Ceylon, and India, along with the United States. In India, she met Gandhi. She was deeply interested in India and its relationship to Great Britain, and especially the concerns of Indian women. So, for example, here we see Royden pictured, among others, at the All India Women's Conference held in Karachi in 1934. Although she pursued a number of interests and causes throughout her life, these three, women, religion, and peace, remained constant. In 1936, she resigned her position as Minister of the Guildhouse Fellowship so she could fully devote herself to the pursuit of peace. She continued speaking, writing, and working for peace for the rest of her life. Royden delivered public addresses, preached and wrote about a wide range of topics, and her writings appeared in diverse kinds of publications, women's suffrage weeklies, newspapers, academic journals, literary and popular magazines, religious periodicals, and magazines focused on women and women's issues. For decades, Royden appeared regularly on BBC Radio. She was the only woman on the platform and the only woman who spoke at Einstein's last lecture in England in 1933 before he left for the United States, never to return to Europe. Although world famous during her life, Maude Royden has been largely forgotten since her death in 1956, especially in the United States. Her notoriety and importance are indicated by the significant press coverage devoted to Royden during the first decades of the 20th century throughout much of the English-speaking world. So we see here a political cartoon that was on the front page of a paper in North Carolina. We see a charcoal drawing of her that appeared in Newsweek. We see Eleanor Roosevelt hosting a luncheon for her on one of Royden's tours of the US. She makes the cover of News Review. She was a well-known person and a person to be dealt with. Her death in 1956 was reported in the New York Times, the Times of London, and many other newspapers and magazines. The New York Times obituary stated Royden was, quote, London's first woman minister and preacher and Britain's first woman doctor of divinity. That was an honorary degree because the field of study of divinity at the doctoral level was not open to women at that time. The Times of London observed that she was one of the first women pastors in England, and being a mistress of pulpit oratory as well as a forceful personality, gained a large following. So that's just to give you some background about Maude Royden. She was world famous. She ran in very, very interesting circles, as we've seen. Gandhi came and preached at her church. Albert Schweitzer on 3 occasions, and Royden interpreted from the French into English. Reinhold Niebuhr, the American theologian, preached at her church. This paper, though, focuses on an aspect of Royden's work that has gone largely unexplored, her interest in Palestine, Arabs, and Jews. As a well-known and highly regarded preacher, speaker, author, BBC radio personality, and public intellectual, the positions Royden held and expressed on Palestine, Arabs, and Jews were influential in her time. In 1913, Royden became the editor of Common Cause, the weekly organ of the National Union of Suffrage Societies, and in which she published many short works. For the next several years, Royden spoke and wrote extensively in support of women's suffrage and helped others organize for the cause. In 1913, the question of war and a Christian's position with respect to it came to Royden's attention. The following year, she became involved with the pacifist movement and soon developed into one of the most prominent advocates for it. Royden understood the complicated and complex relationship between Christian faith and practice, a Christian's obligations toward the state, and Christian views about war and peace. Writing in 1915, she observed, quote, we have a divided loyalty between our duty as citizens and our duty as Christians, and this division is reflected in the divided councils of Christian people today, thereby giving voice to what H. Richard Niebuhr would later describe as the enduring problem for Christianity, that is, the relations of Christianity and civilization. Royden's pamphlet, The Great Adventure to Way to Peace, published during World War I, advocated pacifism and disarmament. Seeing inherent connections between pacifism and the women's movement, Royden is reported to have said, to work for peace was to work for the women's movement, and to work for the women's movement was to work for peace. Anticipating just peacemaking efforts, Royden is reported to have said, "Peace is not stopping war, it is making peace. Christ did not say, 'Blessed are the pacifists.' He said, 'Blessed are the peacemakers.' There are injustices in the world, but no injustice can ever be set right by war." Royden maintained an active and vocal pacifist during World War I and beyond. After that war, she continued to work for the cause of peace and often wrote, spoke, and preached about it while keeping up her speaking and writing about a wide range of other social and political concerns. These efforts, along with her increasing notoriety as a speaker within and beyond the United Kingdom, resulted in Royden being invited to preach at the 1920 International Women's Suffrage Alliance meeting in Geneva, where she became the first woman to deliver a sermon from the pulpit that had been that of John Calvin. During her 1928 world tour, Royden called upon Gandhi while she was in India. She met him again in India in 1935. Inspired by Gandhi in 1932, Royden and two others proposed to the League of Nations the creation of an unarmed peace army. Its purpose would be to forestall armed hostilities between Japan and China during the Manchurian crisis. As envisioned, this group would bring together unarmed civilian volunteers who would position themselves between hostile forces and thereby call upon public conscience to postpone or halt military conflict. Their appeal for a peace army was covered widely in the newspapers throughout the UK, US, and elsewhere, viewed by some as offering hope for a peace where little existed, and by many others as quixotic at best and suicidal at worst. Efforts moved quickly, and the peace army did not come about then. However, it remained a hope of Royden and many others. Royden remained a committed and principled pacifist until World War II. Writing in an April 1941 article published in the Christian Century titled "What Should a Briton Do?" she stated, "There is something worse than war, Hitlerism. If you doubt this, read Mein Kampf again." In this article and others, Royden rejected pacifism for Britain against Nazi Germany, a change of position that Gandhi criticized and called for her to repudiate in a published article. Nevertheless, although Royden departed from Gandhi on pacifism and in the face of Nazi Germany, and did not heed Gandhi's call to repent of her new position and return to pacifism, she continued to admire him and came to view Gandhi, a Hindu, as, quote, the best Christian in the world. Turning now to her views of Jews, Arabs, and Palestine. In 1922, Royden wrote Our Policy in the Near East, published on the heels of the First World War, and as a pamphlet in September. Royden struck themes she would return to some years later when she explicitly focused on Palestine. In 1922, she wrote, "Let us try to face the whole problem and ask ourselves, what are our responsibilities as a country? Not what is the safest thing or the least painful thing we can do, but what responsibilities have we actually undertaken with regard to the countries now at war and those who possibly may be at war soon?" She then discussed Greece, Armenia, Turkey, and Egypt. She noted, "We who did not scruple to ask the help of Greece and Armenia during the war cannot now, without eternal dishonor, think solely of our own interests and leave them to their fate." She continued, "The consistent policy of our government, meaning Great Britain, whether of one party or another, has been the same, to uphold Turkey in Europe because she was a useful pawn in our imperial game." In 1935, Royden published a short article, which she wrote in French, in Jus Suffragi, the official journal of the International Women's Suffrage Alliance. Royden recounted the travels of two European women to Jerusalem, Tripoli, Beirut, and other areas. Royden highlighted, quote, "the need to persuade Arab women that their collaboration in an international suffragist alliance in no way affects their independence with regard to the contentious questions which are currently agitating in Palestine and which excite the national and religious passions. In addition, that an intransigent nationalism is contrary to women's interests." So we see here, Royden, again, she's dealing with women's issues, she's dealing with pacifism, and her own religious beliefs and practices and those of others. Shortly thereafter, Royden and others revived their vision for a peace army, but this time on a much smaller scale. She discussed this in an article titled "Peace Army in Palestine," published in the BBC magazine, The Listener. She wrote, "The publication of the Royal Commission's report will bring home to many people the need for peacemaking in Palestine, and the following information may be of interest to your readers. The Peace Army recently sent 2 of its members to Palestine. They were deeply impressed by the welcome given to them as peace workers by both Arabs and Jews, and by their kindness in helping them to understand the situation. They have come back convinced of the whole of personal service in Palestine, the value of personal service in Palestine. Whatever troubles may arise, or whatever settlements may be reached, this will be needed. The Peace Army feel that a definite challenge has come to peacemakers from some of the villages in Upper Galilee. Our workers saw Arabs come into Jewish colonies there, and they watched Arab and Jewish children playing together. The Jews told them of their desire to be of service to their Arab neighbors, and said they felt the British help in this would make all the difference. So far, they have not met with much encouragement from British people, but hope they might get the help they needed through our peace movement. She also wrote, "We now learn that Jews and Arabs have met to discuss schemes for a mutual benefit society. Among these are plans for child welfare and social and educational center for girls in Arab villages. Services of this kind offered in friendship cuts across political issues, and it may be that there are foundations of peace that can be laid. We have been begged to send out even 1 or 2 workers as soon as we can. One is going out in the autumn, and we know of other possibilities. We hope these workers may be sent with the backing of as wide a circle of peace lovers as possible." In his 1980 book, Pacifism in Britain, 1914 to 1945, subtitled The Defining of a Faith, Martin Seidel notes, in 1937 and 38, 2 members of the Peace Army spent time in Palestine to carry out work of reconciliation. The gesture ended in tragedy when one, Hugh Benham, was shot and fatally wounded. Royden's interest in and writings about Palestine were to increase. In an article, Palestine, What is the Right Solution, published in Peace News in the fall of 38, she wrote, "It is useless to wrangle anymore about the promises we gave so vaguely and evasively in the past. What we want to do is what is right. For my part, I submit that as neither we British nor the League of Nations have any right whatever to give away what did not belong to us, that is Palestine, so we should now admit the right of Arabs to refuse any more Jewish immigration." Again, this is in 1938. "It is our business to seek for countries into which Jews will be admitted, and especially to search the British Empire for such places. It is, moreover, our business to accept a large number of Jewish immigrants into this country. It is our business to find out what the Arabs really want about our mandate and their own future as a people, and what the Jews will accept short of handing over to them a country which we should never have given away. In short, we should try to do what is right." During the next several months, Royden gave talks and wrote letters to the editor about Palestine, expressing her thoughts and advice about it. So we see she continues to write. This is from June of 38. We have a letter to the editor from July of 38. We have announcements of speaking engagements that she gave in October of 38, another in March of 39. In the summer of 38, she traveled to Palestine. Her time there affected her and informed her most substantive publication about it, and that is the book, The Problem of Palestine, published in 1939. In it, Royden summarizes what she sees as important aspects of Jewish and Arab history, British involvement in Jewish and Arab affairs in the first decades of the 20th century, and offers suggestions for how to move forward. It was apparently well received by many, some of whom publicly recommended it. So here we have a Church of England curate who recommended it. Here we have Mr. Safar, Master of Arts, who encourages other folks to read the book in order to gain a better understanding of the actual affairs. In the concluding chapter, Royden introduces what she says the factors that are the problem. She thinks there are 3. The frightful position of Jews in Europe today, which makes them unwilling to remain without a home of their own in which they can be not of sufferance, but of right. So again, this is after Kristallnacht. Second, the increasingly bitter hostility of the Arabs to unrestricted Jewish immigration into Palestine. Third, the incompatibility of the promises given to Arabs by ourselves, meaning the British, with the conversion by continuous immigration of Palestine into a Jewish state. So a few of the things that she notes in this conclusion. A just consideration of the future of the Jews, therefore, must include provision for the Zionist whose passion for the Holy Land of his religion is other than political, yet cannot be satisfied without life in Palestine itself, together with the incomparably larger number who prefer to remain where they are, or if cruel fate drives them out, will be content with security and peace elsewhere than in Palestine. He writes, if Palestine should become a Jewish state and Great Britain ever again be fighting for her life, what would become of that little country left as it easily might be without British forces to defend it and confronted with the implacable hostility of the vast Muslim world? She also writes, it was in our own interest that we promised to the Jews a home in Palestine, which was not ours to give. We must make good that promise elsewhere. Our policy in Palestine is still distorted by our concentration on our own imperial interests, the route to India and the pipeline from Mosul. I maintain, she writes, that our imperial interest still governs us too much and make havoc of our otherwise good intentions. Let us take courage to do what is right instead of continually seeking our own advantage. Let us think only of what is best for a country which has suffered enough from our divided loyalties and our promises to, quote, make in a double sense already. We shall have to ask the Arabs to accept a Jewish population amounting to over 30% of the whole, meaning just over that. To ask for more than this would be intolerable. That ratio ought not to be exceeded. A greater sacrifice would be demanded that Palestine should not become a completely independent sovereign state, but should have an administration peculiar to itself and of international character. Palestine is the Holy Land of three great faiths. These faiths have one great feature in common, belief in a revelation of God through Scripture. Each is the religion of a book. We all, therefore, believe that Palestine is holy. Why should we not, in the same common faith, make it unholy land? Make it a holy land, because we have between us made Palestine a most unholy land. Let its minority problem be controlled in future by a trust. So this is her proposals to the solution in 1939. It is a land sui generis, a land whose like is not in all the world. It is so small a country and so holy that it may surely be spared from this great world and from its discords for the peace which should be its portion. It should no longer be the battlefield of nations, but forevermore inviolate, untouched by war, uninjured by sanctions, its safety and neutrality guaranteed, its peace ensured by those to whom it is a holy land. A commission of 4 people might be entrusted with this higher matter, 1 Arab, 1 Jew, 1 Briton, with an American for chairman. The 3 religions concerned would thus be represented and the rights of minorities guaranteed. In all matters concerning the protection of minorities, religious or racial, this commission would be supreme. In all other matters, Palestine would be governed on democratic principles by the inhabitants themselves. And to this holy land, all pilgrims who seek the face of God should come in security and with welcome, that their prayers may sustain its inhabitants and the work before them. She concludes with a quotation from Psalm 122. Oh, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. The outbreak of World War II and Britain's entry into it caused Royden to turn her attentions to the immediacies of the war. But shortly after it ended, Royden returned to presenting her views about Palestine, Arabs, and Jews. In September of 1945, in a letter to the editor of the Times of London, Royden critiqued Lord Horder's, quote, appeal for action to relieve the dreadful tragedy of the Jews, in which he asserted, does not this terrible catastrophe impose on us a supreme obligation toward the surviving remnants? Royden wrote, no sooner have we answered that it does, that we are told that this supreme obligation is to be cheaply discharged at someone else's expense, and we are not to sacrifice anything at all. Our obligation is to be discharged by the Arabs, who are in no sense whatever responsible for the tragedy. In 1945, in an article in The Listener published by BBC Radio, it was a broadcast discussion between Royden and William Deeds that was moderated by Ronald Storrs. Deeds was Chief Secretary of the British Commissioner of the British Mandate of Palestine, and Storrs was an official in the British Foreign Office. He previously served as Oriental Secretary in Cairo, military governor of Jerusalem, and governor of Cyprus. So again, we see an example here. Royden is running in a circle of folks who are quite knowledgeable about the area. They have experiences. She's seen as somebody who has a voice and someone who has something important to say. I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to go through a few of these screens where she asks questions such as this in her BBC radio broadcast. Are the British prepared to keep a standing army in Palestine? I think we are set for another Jewish massacre if we try to force them, meaning Jews, into Palestine. This again is 1945. She proceeds again to write letters to the editor of the Times and other newspapers, seeking a home for the Jews. She critiques the United States. She critiques Great Britain. She has a lot of things to say about a lot of folks. She is most known as a public speaker, and she often speaks as a preacher. This is her forte. She calls on moral and ethical obligations, values, virtues, duties, and she hopes to be touching people in that sense. So given the time that we have here, I'll just thumb through a few more of these screens. The last letter to the editor that I have from her, written less than a year before she died, titled "Not Ours to Give." We have no right to give away what does not belong to us, meaning Great Britain. Palestine does not and never did belong to us. We promised the Arabs national independence. The Balfour Declaration violated that promise. So she wanted to make a distinction between a national homeland for Jews and said, I'm not sure what that means. Nobody really knows what it means. It definitely does not mean a political state. Lots of folks who have learned about Maude Royden find her a fascinating person in many ways. And often they wonder, why have I not heard of this woman? So I offer some suggestions here. She had no earned doctorate. The field of divinity was not open to women at the time in Great Britain. She had 3 honorary doctorates, one from Mills College, United States, one from Liverpool, one from Glasgow. She was never ordained to the ministry, although she preached and was a well-known, world-famous preacher. She was not ordained. She did preside over a wedding service, but that was shortly after it had been done as a civil ceremony, and then she presided in a church. She never held a full-time university teaching position. She did not mentor graduate students, therefore. Hundreds of her writings appeared in numerous publications of various kinds, so they're spread out. They're all out of print now. The City Temple and the Guild House Fellowship, both were bombed and completely destroyed during World War II. Those records are gone. There is no published bibliography. She wrote hundreds, if not thousands of things. There's no bibliography. And I think a lot of folks can't see the forest for the trees. They'll discuss her as a suffragist. They'll discuss her as a pacifist. They'll discuss her as a smoker. So she was disinvited in 1928 to a number of places in the United States, mostly Methodist churches, when they found out that she smoked. And she said, one, I think God's got other things to do than be concerned with smoke. And as soon as the church tells men to stop smoking, I'll be happy to stop smoking. Right? She was a woman far ahead of her time. She also published under different names, including simply editorial errors. So as someone who goes by a nickname based in his middle name, I feel for Maude. I have a kinship with her. The Christian Century one time flipped her first and middle name, publishing her as Maude A. Royden instead of A. Maude Royden. She married late in life and went by her married name for a period of time. She's somebody that hopefully people will give some more attention to. She was a major player in Great Britain at the time, dealing with Arabs, Jews, and Palestine, but is now, as in many other things, largely forgotten. Thank you for your time as I went through that very briskly.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your time and presentation. Is there any question in person or from the Zoomies? Wait, is there any questions? Okay, please.
Very self-centered. Having missed most of the presentation, I apologize. I was teaching earlier, and maybe this is something you already hit on in the presentation, but I'm just wondering, given that there are some historical crossovers between how Great Britain behaved in the Palestinian mandate with Ireland. I mean, they sent the black and tans in. Did she ever talk about that?
So there's, as a colleague of mine points out, there are a few things that Maude Royden did not write or speak about.
Okay.
So in at least one publication that I found, she says, I'm just ashamed at how my own government has treated Ireland. But as with life in general, you can only do so many things, and Royden did so many things. So she wrote a little bit about Ireland. I believe that she spoke there. That was not one of her main areas of focus. She published 18 books.
Okay.
So she only could do so many things, and I'm stunned at how much she was able to do. She did address it, but it was, and I think she saw parallels there. Yeah, she was, in essence, she was always looking out for the little guy. She came from money, but she did not sit on that money. And so her father headed a cruise line. Her brother became head of the Cunard cruise line. Her father was a member of parliament, a mayor of Liverpool. So she had money. She was not Downton Abbey, but her money was the kind that survived after all those estates fell apart after the Great War. But she looked out for women. She looked out for prostitutes, for children. She was always wanting equality. One of her articles was called, "Why Shouldn't a Woman Be Archbishop of Canterbury?" And she also included coal miners. Why shouldn't a coal miner be Archbishop of Canterbury? She was always a thorn in the side of those in positions of power.
An anti-establishment.
Coming from money.
So not an aristocrat, but from a self-made family.
Yes, and in her unpublished autobiography, she writes that someone asked, "Where did you get this interest in?" And she commented that as a child at home, people would often come see her father when he was a mayor of Liverpool. She was the youngest child. There was a terribly rainy day, thunderstorms, horrible weather. She and her sister were there and assumed no one would come, and there's a knock at a door. And a well-to-do woman had shown up to speak to their father, and they expressed surprise. You came out in this thunderstorm, and she said, "Well, I have a coach." And so it hit Royden that this woman, knowing how bad the weather was, she had a coachman, she had a coach. She didn't care about them or her horses. She was doing fine. And it struck Royden as a child that there's a disconnect here. Good question. Thank you for that.
Is there any questions? Someone online is proposing a reprint of the book you just mentioned. So if you're interested.
Okay, I don't know how to capture that on this, but maybe you could do that, or I could take a photo.
I can
Yep.
take it.
Great.
So thank you everybody for coming and your time. The next panel will be held at 11:30, and you can go back to the program detail and click in the join stream. So we will see you later. Bye bye.